Now that you can recognize the work of two famous French Impressionists, I want to introduce you to Mary Cassatt, an artist and impressionist who was a friend of Renoir and Degas. She was born an American, but lived in France all of her adult life. Her work was more appreciated in France while she was alive, but now she is known as one of the finest American Impressionist painters. Cassatt studied art in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, her hometown, but studied in Paris too. And at age 29, she had two paintings accepted for the famous French exhibition called the Salon in Paris. This is a self-portrait. Let's take a closer look at her paintings. Little Girl in a Blue Armchair is today considered one of Cassatt's best paintings. Her friend, Edgar Degas, supplied the model and her little dog. You can see the influence he had on Cassatt's composition. The plan of the picture is formed by the irregular empty space of the floor and a third chair in the background. The little girl in her lacy white dress and plaid sash is sprawled across the flowered blue armchair. Can you guess what she's thinking? Mary Cassatt captured her personality on canvas and began to realize that she had a special talent for painting children. Grandmother Reading to Children is one of the many paintings Mary Cassatt made of her own family during the 1880s. The two girls sit close to their grandmother to see the illustrations of the story, but the boy, Robert, looks as though he is using his own imagination. Mary Cassatt had strong ideas about color, line, and composition. The girl in the right foreground leads us into the painting and the center of interest, the book. The frame in the background keeps the subjects together, and Robert's plaid suit complements the plainness of grandmother's dress. It wasn't until Cassatt was an elderly woman that she was recognized as one of the world's great artists. This painting of Cassatt's brother and her nephew, called Alexander Cassatt and his son Robert Kelso, shows some influence by Degas. The dark tones of the subject's clothing form a bold design against the pale patterns of the chair and window drapery. Now, here are three different paintings by Degas and Cassatt. Notice particularly the styles and subjects of the two artists who painted them, and see if you can identify them. Do you recognize the subject matter and style of the artist of this painting? Portraits of mothers with their children always show the warmth and closeness of their relationship. This oil painting is called Young Mother Sewing. The artist's brushstrokes were long and loose. In the background, scenery and objects are shown. The child leans comfortably into her mother's lap, watching her contentedly at her work. Can you see that these two figures form a balanced triangle in the composition? The painting is very typical of the work of Mary Cassatt. This painting shouldn't be a problem to identify after all you've learned so far. It shows young girls training for the ballet and is called The Rehearsal. The composition gives you a clue as to who the artist is. The Big Bear Dance Studio is on the ground floor with a spiral staircase leading up to the room where the dancers change into their costumes. A woman helps the girls arrange their gauzy skirts. The gentleman in the background is probably the ballet school's director. The painting looks like a candid camera shot, an unposed moment during the ballet exercise. Have you identified the artist? Of course, it was Edgar Degas. Have you ever seen a group of women like this in your neighborhood or at the park, gathered around a young child who is the center of everyone's attention? The artist used it for a theme for a large pastel painting called Women Admiring a Child. The mother holds her baby while her young friend grasps its hands and speaks to it. What do you think she is saying? A third woman looks on. The sketchiness of the pastel chalk technique emphasizes the brief moment of this impromptu meeting. Can you see that the artist spent more time on the details of the faces? The artist, have you guessed who it is, could hardly keep up with commissions to paint portraits. Of course, you recognized the style of Mary Cassatt. Are you ready now to identify the three final paintings by Renoir, Degas, and Cassatt? You should be able to tell which is painted by the artists you have learned about. And if you can do that, you will probably recognize their work anywhere. Study them carefully. Notice subject matter, style, and the techniques of the artists. We'll spend a little more time with each of the paintings so that what you have learned about the artists will be reinforced. The subject matter of this painting, entitled Patty Cake, was of course your first clue to the artist. The technique is another good clue. The artist often chose to use the soft, chalky pastels rather than oil paints in making portraits of women and children. Although the textures are rough rather than smooth, there is careful drawing with attention to clean lines. You knew immediately that the artist was Mary Cassatt. This painting of life-sized figures was painted indoors and without earlier sketches, suggesting that the artist knew his models well and could do the figures and the setting from memory. The sharper edges of the dancers, in contrast to the blurred background figures socializing at the tables, indicate the beginning of a change in the artist's style. This is a colorful painting. Notice the broad strokes used to paint the woman's pink summer dress, and the bright thin lines of red that trim it. The scarlet hat decorated with large plums. The shades of blue in the man's suit and his yellow straw hat. The fine modeling of the hands. Who else could have painted this happy occasion so well but Pierre-Auguste Renoir? A thrilling ballet performance is preceded by many strenuous, difficult hours of practice. The artist of this painting, called the dance class, observed the class closely as they adjusted their slippers, stretched their muscles, and learned their steps. Movement is suggested by the dancer about to move out of the picture, as well as the strong diagonals of the composition. Cool, clear light and soft grays and whites with unexpected touches of color are also techniques of this artist. The large empty floor space should have helped you to identify the artist of this pastel painting. It is Edgar Degas. Look for and identify these and other paintings by Degas, Renoir, and Cassatt in books and art prints. Try to see the original paintings in art museums whenever you can. Now that you can recognize the styles of these three artists, find more artists and paintings to learn about, and practice your own painting skills too.